start our lunchtime talks with the land acknowledgement. And I'll begin. We recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located to precede the establishment of York University. York University acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Tookarondo has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat, and the Métis. It is now home to many Indigenous peoples. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon, Wampum Dog Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and grow the Great Lakes region. Before I introduce our guest speaker today, I just want to remind everyone of a couple of things. First is the McLaughlin College Community Choir. If you've ever wanted to sing in a choir, this is your opportunity. McLaughlin College Community Choir meets every Wednesday from 4:30 till 6 o'clock, right here in this room. And our choir director, Sebastian Marino, uses the piano here. And we're particularly looking for male voices. We have a lot of female voices, but if anyone is interested, you're all welcome. It's open to anyone in the York University community. You don't have to be specifically a member of McLaughlin College. And Alice, we miss you. You should come back and join us.
I wish I could. You don't have to audition for this choir.
Yeah.
You can just love singing. It's so great.
And you don't have to have any musical background or anything, or previous choir experience. So it's a really fun thing to do. And they've already performed 3 times. They performed at our holiday luncheon, they performed at our first year student dinner, and they performed most recently at our Robbie Burns night and poetry contest. So some of the annual events that take place at the college, the choir actually participates, and everyone really enjoys the performances. So if you can't attend the choir, come to one of our annual events and you'll hear them perform. Also, I think the attendance went around. Hopefully you've signed that. If you attend 6 of our lunchtime talks, you receive a certificate. If you attend 10 or more of our talks, you receive an honor certificate from the college, which always looks good on your resume. And by signing the attendance sheet, your name is entered into a draw, and there's a random draw for a book prize. And then I want to remind everyone of our weekly quiz. We do a weekly quiz, which is available online, is it not? Mm-hmm. Vicki, so it's a lot of fun to do, and if you get the answer correct, and often we get many people that get the answer correct, then we select someone and you win a York University bookstore gift certificate. So there are many reasons for participating in McLaughlin College activities and attending our lunchtime talks. So please take full advantage of it. I want to point out that we have a number of other events taking place on February the 4th, Tuesday, for our noontime talks. We're going to have Professor Tom McLaughlin. And if you're a first-year student, you know we did a common read this year. And Tom McLaughlin is going to go over, this is going to be the last common read workshop for the year. We've done 3 other ones, and the students really appreciate it. His book is on how to succeed at university and get a great job. And I highly recommend the book, even if you're not a first-year student. You're going to learn an awful lot in terms of that, regardless of where you are in your program of studies. But it's also intended not only for succeeding at university, but also at work and in life. So some really fundamental skill sets for you. And then finally, I want to reinforce that McLaughlin College, in keeping with its mandate for the critical assessment of public policy and the betterment of society, commemorates a number of UN international days. And we have two that are forthcoming. One on February the 26th, which is United Nations World Day for Social Justice, and one on March 18th, which is the United Nations International Day for the elimination of racial discrimination. And we will have special panel sessions for that. Our last UN International Day was on
Education.
yes, it was on education, and we had three of the leading faculty of education professors that spoke about the importance of education. So please come out and support those activities. So those are my public service announcements for you. And now we'll get to the main event for today. Taking full advantage of funding opportunities available to finance your degree. And last term, Joanne came in and spoke about investing in yourself and how to take advantage of OSAP and a number of other funding opportunities that are available through the province, but also here at York University. That was a really popular session. We had a lot of people at that session. And she's back by popular demand, so I'm going to turn things over to Joanne, who will enlighten us further on how you can take full advantage of scholarships and bursaries here.
Thank you,
Joanne.
James. So, hi everyone. My name is Joanne. I'm a third-year student. So, like yourself, I also have been through the financial aid applications process, so I know how challenging it can be. I'm here to try to unpack the difficulties and also help you navigate any questions and concerns you have regarding the world of financial aid. So, I'm part of a team. We're called the Financial Support Peers, and we work under Student Financial Services to help students get maximum financial aid. Hi. So, our team, we are trained by Student Financial Services to help answer your questions, but also to know when to direct you further and to give you a referral when you need one. We are at the Bennett Center Mondays to Fridays, 10 to 4, except on Tuesdays and Wednesdays where we finish early at 3 o'clock. So that's our team for this year. So the first topic we're going to be talking about is OSAP. Could you raise your hand if you're an OSAP student so I have an idea? Okay, majority of us. Okay, sounds good. And if there's anyone wondering about the eligibility criteria to be an OSAP student, we can talk about that afterwards because you wouldn't want to miss out on an opportunity like that to fund your schooling. So, OSAP is comprised of two types of funding, grants and loans. So grants are free money, non-repayable, however loans you have to pay back. There's an expectation that as soon as you sign your Master Student Financial Aid Agreement, which is a required document to receive OSAP, that you're agreeing to pay back your loans according to the schedule you and the National. So the National Student Loan Service Center are the people who disperse and get repayment, that you will repay to them. There are also some conditions in which your grants can be converted into a loan, and we'll get further into that. So, the eligibility criteria. First, you have to meet Ontario residency, and in addition, be a Canadian citizen, a permanent resident, a protected person, or a status Indian. So, first, it's about location. Next, it's about the type of program you're enrolled in. So good news is that most programs of study at York are OSAP approved. There are cases where you might be a non-degree student or on a certificate program. That's a little more complicated, and we'd have to go through that eligibility a little more. But if you're full-time doing a major at York, chances are it's going to be approved by OSAP. So in addition, you have to make sure that you kept your previous loans in good standing. So what this means is that you haven't defaulted. So you haven't missed many payments of previous loans, and you've been steadily paying it. If you aren't able to, you would have to be in contact with the National and settle some sort of agreement, in which case you won't go into default. You'll still maintain good standing as long as you stay in communication with them. And maintain academic progress. So the government has specific academic progress requirements that us OSAP students have to meet, and this actually differs from your university's academic progress requirements. We'll get into this too, but this is actually something a lot of OSAP students either don't know of or fail to meet, and in this case, there's a lot of consequences for this, so we'll get into it so you guys are aware. And demonstrated financial need. So OSAP calculates, we'll look at your income, your family income, your own income, but this depends on your status. So whether you're a dependent student or independent student. So personal financial situation is also one of the eligibility criteria. So our OSAP student loan life cycle goes as follows. First, you're in full-time studies. So you can only apply for full-time OSAP if you are a full-time student. If you are a part-time student, you'll have to look into other alternatives, such as part-time Canada student loans and grants, and other scholarships specific to part-time students. Following that is your non-repayment period. So as soon as you write that last exam, I believe the exam period this year ends April 25th. April 26th is the day that you're in non-repayment. So it starts just the day after. It doesn't have to be that you're graduating. It's just that when you finish that last exam for the year of study. And then following that you have 6 months of a non-repayment period. Following those 6 months begins your repayment period, and we're all notified. Since, I believe, fall, the National has changed their method of notification. It's no longer through email, but it's going to be an email. So that's why it's imperative that not just after we study and we're expecting to repay, but during our studies, we make sure that the National has our up-to-date contact information, because they're not only dispersing it to us, but they're also going to want us to repay. So, in full-time studies, I'm sure you all know what full-time studies are, but just to clarify, it's 60% per term if you don't have a permanent disability. So this is equivalent to 9 credits per term. And when we say per term, this is actually another kind of pitfall, because you could be in a year-long course worth 6 credits, and it will run from September to April. In this case, it's your responsibility to make sure that you're assigning half to fall and half to winter. Because if you're in 2 year-long courses worth 6 credits, that's 12 credits, and that's great, but that doesn't count full-time for OSAP if you don't have a permanent disability, because that actually equates to 6 in the fall, 6 in the winter. So make sure that when you're doing the calculation of your course load, you're enrolling in an adequate number. And it's 40% for students with a permanent disability. If you do have a permanent disability, there is a process for you to submit a form, and that's another required document.
So can I just ask you for clarification on that? Full-time studies, I'm surprised that, I may be misinterpreting, that it's so low. So you essentially only have to take 2 full-year courses to more than meet the minimum requirement for full-time studies.
Yeah, so good question.
So that seems like part-time to me, is it where I'm coming from?
No, I actually thought the same thing. It's actually a pretty small number, but it is the minimum full-time for OSAP requirements is 60%. So as long as you're 9 in the fall, 9 in the winter, having done that course load calculation, if you're in any year-long courses, then you've met full-time status requirements. Yeah. So just, yes.
Just following up on what she was saying, the because I did 9 credits before, when I called, they told it has to be 15.
So 15 per term is the York requirements, like that meets, so full-time for York requirements is 15 credits per term for a total of 30 credits for the academic session. But for OSAP, it is 9 credits per term for a minimum of 18 credits per the academic session. So maybe there was some misinformation there, but these are the requirements. Okay? And again, this is full-time for full-time OSAP. So our OSAP student life cycle. So to further break down those 3 stages of in full-time studies, in non-repayment, in repayment, we can look at our cycle while we're in full-time studies. So first you apply. The OSAP application usually opens around the springtime, maybe like March. I don't know a certain date, but in the springtime. And so we're advised to apply 6 to 8 weeks before we begin our studies. This is just so that your application is processed in a prompt manner, and it guarantees that you'll receive your money in time for the fees of the due date. So we actually have a recommended date. The Financial Aid Office recommends we apply by June 30th, because students who apply by June 30th will actually have their student account fees, interest fees waived in September and January for applying by June 30th. So in some cases, you apply in a timely manner, but you still don't get your money on time for September 10th and January 10th, and these are when our fees are due. In this case, if you applied by June 30th, then you don't have to worry because it'll be waived both after both fee due dates. So we do recommend that you apply by June 30th. And then you submit your required documents. So based on the OSAP application information you enter, you're going to have specific required documents that you have to submit. But if you are a first-time applicant, you will always have to do your consent and signature pages and your Master Student Financial Aid Agreement. And your Master Student Financial Aid Agreement will carry over as long as you're as long as you are continuous full-time studies applying for OSAP. But if there's a break in 2 years of your full-time studies, you will have to submit another one just to inform you. And then you will receive your funding. A lot of times, students think that once they receive their funding, then that's it for the OSAP cycle of the year. But that's not correct, because it's our responsibility to make sure that all the information stays up to date with our personal current situation. In any case it changes, you are required to update your application, which we'll get into the steps of how to. But this is imperative because if you don't, there could be situations where you may have an overpayment where you receive more funding than you were eligible to, because maybe you got promoted, or maybe you were underfunded because now you've lost your job, so you need a little bit more funding. So in any case, you can have a reassessment of your current of what you were initially eligible for. So that's why we have to keep our OSAP application up to date. And then again, is progress academically. We'll get into that, I believe, in the next slide. So this is another reason why your OSAP application could be reassessed, because maybe you dropped more courses, maybe you're in less courses than you anticipated, and so now your OSAP application says you're going to be in 30 credits, but maybe you're just in 18 credits. So in this case, we update it, and it may or may not result in a funding recalculation. We actually don't know until the change is made and the calculation is applied. And then you proceed to the next study level. So once you're done your last exam, let's say you're in first year and you're going to go into second year. Within that 6-month period, so from April to October, this is your non-repayment period. You have to ensure that either you do one or two things. You return to full-time studies the next year and you apply for OSAP, or you return to full-time studies the next year and you apply for interest-free status. I'll get into that a little bit more, but the reason why you want to do this is because you want to keep your previous OSAP loans in interest-free status, and the only way to do so is using either of these applications, so your OSAP application or your interest-free status application, to ensure the national is aware that you're still in full-time studies. And if you aren't proceeding to the next study level, and you're not going to enroll in full-time studies. So you're either graduating or you're doing a lesser course load the next year. You're going to start repayment, which we'll get into. So if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me. So receiving your OSAP. I think the academic progress one is after this one then. But the National Student Loan Service Center is actually responsible for dispersing your loans. A lot of times students will come to Bennett Center and they'll check their National Student Loan Service Center account and they'll see maybe like $2,000 dispersed. If that's the case where you think, where it says that your money was dispersed and you can't find it in your bank account and you don't see it reflected in your student account, this is the kind of situation where you need to contact the National because they're the ones who disperse your funding. So our financial aid office processes your application, but the people who disperse and accept repayment is again the National. So OSAC will aim to pay 50% of your current balance. So on your student account, there's a section that says current balance. Sorry, it's kind of blurry. But whatever that current balance is, let's say it's $4,000. 50% of that is $2,000. So depending on your OSAP entitlement, it'll aim to pay $2,000. The rest will go to your bank account. Some cases, our assessments are less than what our current balance is. So maybe my assessment was $1,000, but OSAP wants, but 50% of my current balance is $2,000. In that case, I won't expect anything in my bank account because it'll all go to OSAP to pay at least, to aim to pay 50%. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. That's always hard for me to explain because I'm not really good. So 50% of your current balance, and it can be released in 2 to 3 installments. So if you at first you don't see the full amount, just wait a bit because give it a couple 2 to 3 days, business days, and then if it's still not there, there's still not cause for concern. You can call the National and see where your money is. You can always check your National Student Loan Service Center account too. And I also want to make it clear that your national account is not the same thing as checking your OSAP account. We'll go into that, but your national account is the way for you to actually track your funding since year 1 to year since year 1 of the day you apply for OSAP and onward. Your OSAP account is great too. You'll be able to see your previous application, but you should really be referring to both. So changes to your application. We have to keep our OSAP applications up to date because there are consequences in the case where we make more money and we don't report it. And then there's also situations where if you're underfunded, you can seek further help. So always keep your information up to date. And you do so by downloading an OSAP form, which you can either find on the OSAP York website. These forms are if you're dropping course loads, if you're making an income change, if you're adding courses, any of these kind of changes, you can use an OSAP York form. Alternatively, you can use one of the ministry forms as well, which is in our OSAP, the OSAP ministry website. So we have two again, the York OSAP website, where it's informational, and then the ministry website where we actually apply for OSAP and we can also get forms. The ministry website has forms where if you need to appeal your funding, so in any case where your personal situation changes unexpectedly and you need to appeal your funding, you need to ask for more, you can use one of these forms to begin that process. So, okay, academic progress requirements. So, as OSAP students, we're required to maintain full-time status while we're receiving funding. So, this means we have to pass a 60% course load during the year if we do not have a permanent disability, and if we do have a permanent disability, pass a 40% course load. If you fail to meet academic progress requirements, you will be put on probation, and that period you will be expected to maintain requirements then. If you fall short of requirements 2 times, once during the period where just one time then, and then the period when you're on probation, you'll actually be restricted from applying for OSAP the next year you try to apply. So this is one area where if you don't meet requirements, there's not much leeway. If it's a matter of maybe your study habits, the only way you can potentially appeal this is, again, if there's extenuating circumstances, which then there is a lot of flexibility. Otherwise, it can't just be a matter of you dropping courses because you don't like it all of a sudden and you plan to defer to the summer. It doesn't work out like that because if OSAP gives you funding, they expect you to maintain full-time status as you receive your funding. So, grants converted to a loan, again, this is another consequence that could happen if either of these things happen. So you withdraw from studies within the first 30 days, and you don't return as a full-time student within 5 months of the same academic period. As a result of an OSAP reassessment, so for example, you drop courses, you're making a lot more than what you initially anticipated, you could not be eligible for the grant assessment you initially received. Or, this is a very serious one, the income you reported can't be verified with Canada Revenue Agency. So we have to file our taxes, right? We have to make sure we do that. And if we miss a tax filing year, either even our parents, not just us, if you're a dependent student, you report your parents' income, and if your parents maybe didn't file that year, and now the next year you apply for OSAP, you got your money, but when CRA checks, they can't verify that, you will see that your funding will all turn into loans. So your grants, any grant you receive, becomes a loan. So make sure that your parents file their taxes and you file your taxes, because there are serious consequences for that. And just to give you a little more information, once you file your taxes, let's say you report your income on your OSAP application. You have to make sure you're reporting the correct income, because in the case where it's a huge variance from what you reported on your OSAP application and what CRA has on file for you based on your tax return, then you could be restricted for OSAP there. Does that make, so file your taxes, but make sure you're putting the correct numbers. So, after full-time study period, now you're in non-repayment period. So this is 6 months after you leave full-time studies. So remember, just writing that last exam, or just that the last day of the exam period, I should say. So if I'm right, it'll be April 25th for this year, or April 20th, I'm not too sure. But whatever the day of our winter exam session ends, that's the day where we leave full-time studies. Or you withdraw from studies, and it's not just repayment you're going through. Remember, there are more consequences. Your grants can be converted to a loan depending on when you do so. A lot of withdrawing from studies after receiving OSAP, you just want to think about a little bit. Drop to part-time studies. So again, you have to be full-time to maintain, to be eligible for full-time OSAP. So if you don't maintain full-time status, you will be expected to repay, and you could also be put on academic probation by OSAP. And at this point, your loan repayment is optional, so 6 months, you don't have to pay your loans, but you have to start preparing for it. At this time, however, interest is accruing. So I believe it's prime plus 1. I'm not too sure, actually, but if you go on the website, you'll be able to see. And during this period of your non-repayment, the National will get in touch with you and start planning out that, giving you that monthly amount that you'll owe them during your repayment period. You should not wait for the National to contact you. You actually you have to be proactive about it and get it and contact them yourself. You can see your monthly payment, and if it is too much, if you are under if you have so many financial commitments, this repayment amount could be too much for you to handle. In this case, we highly recommend you call the National, because they are your resource. They are there to help you. And we'll go through that a bit more. So if you want, this is very basic. Just to clarify what I've been trying to say you write an exam January 31st. That's your last exam. Again, the next day. And then you have 6 months, your payment starts. I just wanted this up here so you understand that it happens the very next day. So So end of study, you're done full-time studies, you're not planning to come back, then you're in your 6-month non-repayment period, then your repayment period starts. Even if you're at the end of studies and you do plan on coming back the next following September, you're still counted as someone who left their studies until you reapply for OSAP or you apply for interest-free status. Because there's no way the national will know you're in full-time studies unless you do so through either of those 2 applications. So this is when you're like, okay, you know what, I'm not going to apply for OSAP this year. Maybe you have, whatever the reason is, you still want to apply for interest-free status because you are in full-time studies, so you're not actually required to make any payments toward your outstanding loan balance until you're done your full-time studies. If that's the case, apply for interest-free status. It's in the same OSAP ministry website. In your OSAP account, you'll see a gray button saying interest-free status. You click there, you put your program study start date and end date, again when you're full-time, and then they'll be able to make sure that any interest that is applied is not applied, or it's anything that was previously applied is waived. The only way it's waived though is if you make sure that you apply for interest-free status in a timely manner. So what this means is that you don't wait until you get your repayment notice. Like, you don't wait for the national to send you an email saying you owe, let's say, $500 November 1st. It's you applying for interest-free status before that. You want to apply within 15 days of the start of your study period, okay? Because it's not definite that the interest will be waived if you apply anytime after that. So, notification to repay. Again, it's going to be emailed to you, but you aren't going to wait for this email. You want to be proactive about it. If you know you're not going to return to full-time studies, call the national. It does take a while to get to the agent at the end of the phone, but just persist, just wait, be on hold for a bit. It's worth it because you'll be able to understand that it's not something you have to fear. It can be a really successful experience so long as you tell them you're transparent about your situation and you talk to them. I actually talked to my sister's in repayment. She talked to them and she was able to defer her payments until she gets a steadier job. So there are opportunities. It's a process you have to go through, and just don't be intimidated by it. Because I know that when you look at your total amount you have to pay on your national, it could be like $32,000, and that's really scary. But there are resources to help. So repayment period, immediately after the 6 months of non-repayment, the 6 months after you leave full-time studies. So just to give you a background of who the national is, even if you're not an OSAP student and you're taking loans through your province, so you're an out-of-province student, you're still gonna have to know who the national is because they manage all government Canada student loans and grants programs and some provincial loan and grant programs. So this is the national, and they actually will set the length of your repayment, and that's expected. For us, is the average is 9.5 years. So most of our repayment schedules are based off of us paying it by the end of 9.5 years. If you're in those difficult situations, maybe you're still looking for a steady job, then this is when you can contact the national again and have it extended to 14.5 years. This doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be paying more interest. Well, actually, sorry, it does mean you'll be paying more interest if you extend the period, but if you're in contact with the national, letting them know what is going on in your life, it doesn't have to mean that. It can mean something else, where maybe the government is going to cover the interest at that time, or something else. It's just your responsibility to talk to them and see what can be done. So again, and you can adjust your payment terms during your payment period as your situations change. So tips to save on interest. If you do any of these, there's no penalty, just to clarify. So you can make payments while in school. So if you make payments while in school, you're literally just paying what they gave you. There's no interest while we're in school, right? So if you are getting, let's say, $1,000 for this year, that's a very small amount, but let's say you are, $1,000 in loan, and let's say you pay maybe $100 while you're in study, then then you will only be paying $1,000 while you're in study, and that $100 each month can eventually equal to that $1,000, and then you're done. Pay during the non-repayment period. So unfortunately this year the interest-free grace period again is no more. So that happened, and so if you pay during the non-repayment period, there is interest accruing, but it's kind of hard because we kind of had this lag before when we thought that we had interest-free grace period. But if you pay during your non-repayment period, it's also like nice because you're starting that process. Pay larger amounts than the minimum calculated to reduce the interest. Make weekly or bi-weekly payments. Make lump sum payments. So consider how you can make your repayment period successful. The first step again is to contact the national. The second step is to look at your own financial habits and see how you can maybe cut costs in order to make that monthly payment. Or in another case, sorry, I lost my train of thought. But so just consider ways you can cut your spending to make the payment on time. So the repayment assistance fund. This is an amazing opportunity for us because it's a way that you don't have to be afraid of that monthly amount that they stipulate on your in your repayment package. You can actually look at it as an amount that maybe, okay, I can't pay. Then I'm going to call the national and I'm going to see how the repayment assistance plan can help me. So it's just like, it's another application you go through, and there's nothing wrong with trying. So if you are eligible, you can already, so this is eligibility first of all. So if you're a family of one, if it's just you, you're making less than if you're making this amount or less than $2,083 per month, then you're eligible for RAP, and this is when you can make reduced payments, so not the monthly amount originally calculated, or you can make no payment. And this is when the government of Canada actually steps in and helps offset the loan repayment balance. So the repayment assistance plan, when you apply for it, it is a period of 6 months in which it's in effect, and following those 6 months, you have to reapply again. So it's every 6 months, but it's a great way for you to understand the options you have if you can't make your loan payment. So if you don't pay your loans, of course, there are consequences. So again, call the national, make sure that they know what's happening in your life, because there's no reason why you should be in default. So again, your debt will be turned over to a collection agency, which makes it actually really hard for you to get help. So you want to get help while you, before that ever happens. Don't miss payments and then get help. Get help before you have your payment due date. You will be reported to a credit bureau. You'll be ineligible for further OSAP. So say you want to pursue, you want to do your PhD, your master's, anything like that, you're not going to be able to get OSAP if you're in default. This will affect your ability to get a car loan, mortgage. You won't get your income tax refund. And of course, interest will continue to build up. Because at this point, nobody knows that you are under these difficult financial situations. All they know is that you're not paying your loans. And of course, you will not be able to apply for RAP. So this is why you want to apply for repayment assistance before you actually have to see the consequences of missing your payments. So, register for your national account. Everyone here has an OSAP account, and if you actually apply for OSAP this year, you will have a National Student Loan Service Center account. Years prior, we actually didn't have to create one, but now we do, and it's actually a better way to make sure that students are responsible for their funding, because your National Student Loan Service Center account, first of all, you will be able to apply for RAP here, Repayment Assistance Plan. You'll be able to track your funding from the very first disbursement, and you'll also be able to see what is current. So If you're expecting funding now, you'll be able to see your payment history and if it's been dispersed. You'll also be able to change your bank account with OSAP. If you want your OSAP to go somewhere else, you can do so in your national account. Your OSAP application, you'll be able to see the information you entered in order to get an assessment, and you'll be able to see the years past. You'll also be able to see what your actual calculation, so your funding assessment is. But the National Student Loan Service Center account, you'll be able to do other steps like change your bank account information, start thinking about repayment, looking at your history, disbursement history, and seeing your bill payments. So if you do end up making a payment to the national, you'll be able to see the amount in your account there, not in your OSAP account, your national account. So this is what you need. All of us received an email from the national when we first applied for OSAP advising us to apply. Some of us ignored it. I know I actually ignored mine for like 2 years, and I only got mine this year because I'm soon going to graduate. But we all have it. It's still there. Just go in your email inbox search area, and this is all you need. This is how you make your National Student Loan Service Center account. And if you are considering paying your loans too, all you need is your loan account number as your account number, and the payee is the National Student Loan Service Center. You can put in whatever amount you want. So just to save yourself some time, because I know that a lot of us use the Bennett Center as a one-stop shop for any question we have. Come visit us for sure, but I want to let you guys know where to go if you have a certain question. So if it's a question about your funding, eligibility, then you're going to go to Student Financial Services. So in this case, it may be when you want to start the appeal process. It could be, am I off time? Sorry. Okay, no, I'm not. I thought it was because I was looking at the clock. Sorry about that. Just want to make sure that I am not wasting more time than I have. Okay, so it's about your application basically. Student Financial Services, they process your application. They look at what you enter, and the calculation is applied. You see your assessment. If your assessment is maybe too low, and it could have been because you miscalculated, maybe you put that you are receiving Ontario Works, but you're not. Maybe you put your income is $14,000 and it's not. You can always update it with one of our OSAP forms, and that's when Student Financial Services is processing your application and those required documents, and those documents you send to update your account. And also, talk to Student Financial Services if you're in extenuating circumstances. Maybe your parents lost their job and you need more OSAP. That's when you can go to Student Financial Services again, so Bennett Center. So that would be an appeal, the status of your application, and loan and grant eligibility. You come to us. But you're going to go to the national if it's anything about the release of your funding or the repayment of your funding. So if on your account it says X number of dollars is dispersed and you don't know where it is, you talk to the national. They can help you track that. Making loan payments, so whether it be in study or when you're in your repayment period, again, that's through the national. And again, you want to be tracking your funding throughout your studies through your online account. It's always going to be there, and it may or may not increase, but you want to be aware of the amount. You can't just wait until you're graduating and you're going to be like, oh, okay, so that's how much I owe. You want to start making those steps to pay it now. I know it's scary, and I know you have a lot of financial commitments and responsibilities. It's very hard to actually be a student, because it's like we keep deferring our gratification. We're like, okay, when I get there, I'm going to be successful. That's when I'll start paying. If you're the type of person who can only save money when you have this much dollars, like maybe like you're like, I'll only save if I can save $1,000. You want to consider why you think that and introspect a little bit. Check in with yourself, because you can't expect to save $1,000 if you don't make the little steps now. Like cut your fund. Maybe you don't need maybe you have more wants than you can afford. You have to consider these kind of little things so you can make that lump sum payment or these payments to the national before you fall into debt, like too much debilitating debt. So we can get into that too. But OSAP tools calculator. So when we were giving this workshop, we actually we used one of these calculators just to show students what it's like to actually pay during your repayment period when you're getting interest accrued. Does anyone want to see the results of that? And this is actually online too, so you can see it there. But when we did do it, I believe we put 32,000 because I think most tuition is like 8K per year and for a total of 4 years. And I can't remember how much more it was than what we initially put, but I knew it blew my mind. So use the OSAP repayment calculator to get an idea of what it's like with the interest on top of it. Because maybe that will motivate you to change your financial habits at present so you can start making payments while it's interest free.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Why would you not, at the beginning, once you get into a context of starting a loan, develop a strategy for repayment at the beginning, not because the logical situation to go into is rising debt.
Yeah.
So unless you have and by the way, that's a basic problem in budgeting,
Yeah.
because you have to look at the downstream effect. So I think one of the things students will have to begin to think about seriously, not so much to get the money to actually go to school, but to also think about the repayment
Yeah.
and the job situation. Do you ever sort of get the student thinking that way?
We want them to know, first of all, that the National isn't just people who want your money, but they're people you can talk to make that plan that works for you. But more than that, whenever it's hard to begin a conversation of like saving your money so that it's actually allocating your money to your outstanding loan payment, just because it's like you want to take care of yourself. Like this is me too. Like I want to take care of my needs in the moment. And so what I want to do is maybe go out with my friends, go to the movies. But I know I don't have to. I have a subscription to Netflix. I don't need to go to the movies. I don't need to actually spend like $30 just because I'm out. So these are the things that like I have trouble negotiating with myself because I feel like I deserve it. And it's like where you keep thinking your self-care costs, it's like an expensive self-care, and you don't do anything to make yourself think otherwise, then that's when we kind of put our priorities are a mess.
No, but what I'm really getting at, and I suppose I sort of did my thesis on planning. So one of the interesting things is that if you project forward, then the whole idea is to begin to look, first of all, one of the things that students should realize, loan process, the Minister of Finance in Canada guaranteed loans, while you're in school. So down the road, really, the banks, one reason why people couldn't study very much early prior to the 1960s, banks wouldn't do it. That's risky business. So you get the government backing it up, and in a way to broaden the base of education. So the idea of having a larger percentage of the population going through education.
Yeah.
And that is the whole idea. So what I'm suggesting, and I'm only thinking of it now retrospectively, because I went through university. Actually, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Actually, I started university at 21 and had a PhD in 33. But not only did I graduate, but I also had 4 children. They're all in their 50s now. And you had to have a strategy to actually deal with that because your revenue is kind of fixed or low.
Yeah.
And so I also think that students very early should think of student loan as an investment.
Yeah.
If you think of it as an investment, not the consumption side. Consumption, you always need more money. You don't have any money, right? So you get some more. So you're going to get progressively deeper and deeper in debt. And I would also suggest to that you try to factor in a repayment from the very beginning. For example, suppose $10,000 and you're paying $50 a year, at least you start paying a little. And you're cultivating the culture of repayment. Definitely the voice of experience. I'm just showing me that, but you're right in explaining to the students about that they can get the money, but they also have to think seriously about the repayment.
Yeah, it's hard because, like, I keep telling people this, but myself, I know that, man, it's really hard to change, like, overhaul your, well, I don't think it's overhauling your lifestyle, but maybe, like, just including, like, repayment as a necessity.
But also, I'll just leave you with this too,
Yes.
because I'm going, it's a consumer society.
Yeah.
The one reason why young people don't go to school, they want to go very young and get the car, and live a certain lifestyle. To go to school, you have to forego that kind of thing, okay? And it's almost like a form of punishment, you know, because you're walking around without any money,
Yeah.
or what I do, and everybody else is progressive.
Yeah.
So I think it's a whole different attitude. And by the way, immigrants know a lot about that, because when they come into the country, they're not allowed to borrow money or what have you and stuff like that. So even if the sweep floors are doing kinds of stuff, they get that kind of money. So it requires a completely different culture. And I think one has to think seriously about that.
Yeah.
You know, so and that's more a sociological point, looking at the whole culture of behavior and borrowing money. By the way, it has anything to do with consumption, to any form of consumption. So, but I thought I'd just throw that one after you, but.
Thank you so much.
But that's a good thing to think about. It's very good, it's a very important topic.
Yeah, it is very relevant to me too. I'm actually graduating in the winter next year, so this is becoming very real. That's all I can say. Yeah.
You have 6 months for non repayment.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like it doesn't count anymore though if it's not interest free. It's like, okay,
So you
non-repayment.
have to apply for interest free.
I know, but I can't apply unless I come back to school.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
You're graduating.
Yeah. So, sadness. But we can, but again, like, that's why, like, sorry, could I have your name again?
I'm Professor Finn.
Professor Finn?
Finn, P-H-I-D.
Oh,
Mid.
Finn.
Finn. It's pronounced F-I-D. You know the English.
Richard Friedberg.
Richard, okay.
Just Richard, okay.
So like Richard said, it's not just about knowing that the National is there for us, it's also about us taking the first step towards financial wellness, which is, it's all about your strategy, your planning. So I actually made a resolution to myself that my Netflix subscription would be the only need of mine. Because when I was actually looking at my needs versus my wants, I realized that 90% of things I was putting there could be converted into a want. So 90% of my needs were actually wants. For example, like, do you really need a cup of coffee to function every day? And if the answer is yes, why are you getting that at Starbucks or Tim Hortons? You can meal prep instead of buying food on campus. You can even, and if you have a credit card, for example, is your credit card actually benefiting you? Think about points, right? If you love like a certain, like maybe smoothie from Booster Juice, I can't think of off the top of my head, but if your credit card gives you points to get free drinks, maybe that's your credit card. So don't just look into products that about the face value amount they give you, but think about how it fits into your lifestyle to give you like little opportunities to save. So these are the things I need to consider, I need to research, and so I can improve. So that said, as we're in studies, thank you so much. We can actually all have a conversation about what we're doing to save after too, if anything. But just to give you more ideas of certain scholarships and awards and bursaries available, before we go into it, I just want to let you know that RBC on campus actually let me know of a scholarship opportunity, which you all are welcome to take a picture. I didn't bring too many, but the link is here. even if you just Google this RBC Future Launch Scholarship, you'll be able to see that it's an opportunity for you to get $1,500. They don't look at your grades or your transcripts or community involvement. All they're looking at is, are you someone who wants to acquire a new skill? Are you someone who wants to learn something more, but you just can't afford it? So maybe you've always wanted to go to a coding boot camp or like take swimming lessons. This is a scholarship for you to apply and have your desire to learn be rewarded. So it's right here. One condition is that you not be in full-time studies upon applying. So if you are, like, just be aware of that. You have to be either part-time or not in studies when you apply. So this is, and the deadlines are there too. In addition, I know this doesn't have to do with scholarships, but I know some people may have to go soon. Feel free to take any of these management, money management and budgeting trackers. Sorry. Just so that you have as a first step towards you planning to repay your loans. So, and all of it is here. And I know that if anyone has to leave, you can just leave your feedback surveys. Please complete them anywhere, and I'll just come collect it after on your seat. So as we continue the presentation, there are 3 types of financial awards you can receive at York: a scholarship, a bursary, and an award. So scholarships are based on your average usually, and or your community involvement. Awards are based a little bit on your half on merit and half on financial need, and bursaries are just based on financial needs. So if you go to the student financial profile, you will be able to see a list of all the York funding available to you. You don't have to read all of that because I know it's a lot. You can just select each check mark and York will go through what is you're eligible for and potentially give you the award. You'll be notified by the award through a formal letter or an email. So everyone actually here should complete a student financial profile, because even if you think you don't have the grades for it, again, bursaries are just based on your financial needs. So how do you get one? If you're a first-year student, you're assessed and offered during the admission process. But also, if you're a first-year student, you don't need to, you don't have to be passive about it. There's not just scholarships and bursaries offered at York. It's offered everywhere, just like the example of the RBC. It could be a scholarship from another bank. It could be with the organization you're volunteering with. So just be very, very proactive when you're on the search for free money, right? And also, the high value awards are not just something you can sit down and expect your transcript to get for you. It's something you might need to write an essay for, something you might need to get reference letters for. So when you're planning how to finance the year, look into scholarships and make sure you're don't look just in the summer, look throughout the year. That's all I can say, because new ones crop up all the time, but also you don't want to see the deadline and feel like you missed out on an opportunity. So once a student has enrolled in studies, again, this is the way you normally get one, but it's not the only way, because again, the high value ones are ones you might need to supplement your application. And so you can get scholarships at York through the student financial profile. Again, tick all the boxes, don't leave one blank. Or you can go, or if your faculty might send you communications on a scholarship, or your college. So talk to your faculty, talk to your college, because they'll have more information on this. Our Student Financial Services website has everything about the student financial profile, not so much about what your college offers. So, receiving financial awards. Decisions are made. Yes, sorry.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
So, is this going to be part of OSAP funding? Is it going to be considered as part of that?
That's a good question. I'm actually going to get into that, but to clarify for everyone, if you receive an award, bursary, scholarship, doesn't matter, from the university, and you're an undergraduate student, Student Financial Services will report that to OSAP on your behalf, and that'll be considered when they generate an assessment for you. Okay, so if you get $1,000 from York and you're an undergraduate student, York will tell OSAP, and then they'll consider that when they give you an assessment.
Which will reduce the overall funding.
It could, yeah, it could. I don't know exactly how the calculation works. It might or it might not actually affect it. I'm not too sure. But if you're a graduate student and you're getting anything from York, you have to report that yourself. So graduates self-report. Undergraduates receiving internally from York do not have to report because York will do it for them. But if you're an undergraduate and you're getting an award from like somewhere not in York, so let's say you're getting it from RBC, for example. This is the type of money you have to report. Okay, so if anyone does end up getting the RBC Future Launch Scholarship and you're an OSAP student, you report that yourself if you're an undergrad or grad. Sorry, yes?
I was just wondering for that scholarship, it says that you should not be in school or part-time. When they say not in school, do they mean like not actively taking courses or not enrolled in the program?
Okay, that's a really great question. So I actually talked to the RBC on campus associate. I haven't got a response yet, but he initially, so he told me that, because right now I was asking him if there's any scholarship opportunities you can let the students know. I'm a full-time student. He's like, oh yes, you can apply, you can look at this and go through it. I'm just, right now, it's, if at the time of the application, so right now we'll be eligible if we do in the summer, but we don't take summer school. So if you're full-time right now, you wouldn't be eligible, right? If you have questions, I believe there is a section for that. Or is there not? Oh yeah, so if you have questions, there's an email you can ask, but also if you have questions while you're doing this, we'll be at the Bennett Center and I can help you there too, okay?
Okay.
But that was a really good question. That was the same question I had. So yeah, apply, but make sure you apply having met the eligibility criteria at present. So, okay, requesting a refund. So this is a situation in which case you overpaid your student account. Maybe OSAP and your scholarship hit at the same time. Maybe you decided to pay with some money in your bank account and OSAP hit at the same time. In this case, you'll have a negative amount. This is a credit balance, so you could have like, let's say negative 1,000. Negative is not a bad thing in the case of your bank account or your student account. Your student account current balance. It just means you've overpaid and this money can be refunded to you. The way it's refunded is one way. Only through direct deposit. You have to go to YorkU, request a refund. Even if you Google YorkU refund, enter your banking info, your direct deposit information, transit number, account number, institution number. York is going to send you a test deposit of maybe like 3 cents, and you're going to enter that deposit once you receive it. Once your information has been verified, they'll send you the full amount that was sitting in your student account. Just make sure that even if you're not waiting for a refund, you can do this today, just so that York has it, and you don't have to. York will have it in case you ever do have an overpayment. And if you've overpaid your student account. Overpayment and overpaid, different. Okay. So I highly recommend that anyone who hasn't done this, do this now. And also, remember to enter your social insurance number. I believe by February, I'm not sure the exact date, but just if you're not aware yet, a lot of communications have been sent out. Whoever doesn't will be charged, I think, $100 or $50 for not having their SIN in their York profile. Reporting financial awards. So, like we just talked about, if you're undergrad receiving from York, don't have to report that. If you're a graduate receiving from York, you have to report that. If you're receiving external awards, everyone reports that. Okay, other sources of funding. So, on-campus employment program. Previously, it was some employment opportunities were just reserved for domestic students, but now it's for everyone. On-campus wages can range from $14 to $20. So look into these opportunities. Go onto the Career Center website, see what is applicable to you. Not all of it is administrative work. Some of it's leadership opportunities. Like I'm getting paid to learn about financial aid, something that really makes a difference as a student for me. And I'm getting paid for it. So think about these opportunities where you can make, where you can network, you can learn more about yourself and what can help you at York. And it's great opportunities to resume build. But it's usually work study, so we do accommodate your class schedule. They have to. So if that's a concern you had to, keep that in mind. Work study. They know you're a student. Higher education points. I actually don't know too much about how this works, so I'm just going to read this word for word. But transforms loyalty program points into payments for school. You would have to go to this website because if I just say anything about it, it could be wrong. And Wyconic, Scholarships Canada. To be honest, when I was in high school and even now, they always told us about these websites. I haven't ever found anything from them, but if anyone has a story, a positive experience with these websites, feel free to share. Personally, when I looked for scholarships, I was actually in a Toronto Catholic District high school. So I looked through by just searching like in the TCDSB website awards, and I got a lot through the Angel Foundation. So I took smaller community steps than using these ones because these are like national, so you're competing with everyone, and also I never really applied for anything off here. So tips to save on the dollar for every day. Just before you go, does anyone have any stories they want to share about how they have reduced their spending, how they budget maybe, or even small steps to saving? Like, for example, in my case, let's see what I do. Okay, what I have been doing actually is thinking of, instead of maybe going to a place to study like Starbucks or even staying on campus in York Lanes, I don't study there anymore because I know that I always carry my credit card on me, and I always think that studying deserves to be rewarded. So I will go and I will get myself even something small, like maybe like a small drink that costs me like $2. Doesn't seem like a lot, but I end up making a habit of studying in these areas. So I decided no more. If I'm going to study, I'll study at the library, which is free. And all that's near is a vending machine, and I don't carry coins. I only carry a credit card. So that's why it works for me. So these small changes I've made, I have been able to save a little bit of money. Where else? Yes?
Well, I can just share from my experience because I work for a bank
Yeah.
prior to moving to Canada. So one way of saving is, by not paying the interest. For example, if you have a credit card, if you just keep paying the principal, first of all, you have to cut down a lot of stuff that will add up. So, but then if you get into the habit of paying in full every month, then it saves you a lot because there's a compounding effect of the interest. That's number one. The second thing that you could do is, for example, the commute over here is very, very expensive. For example, I didn't have a car, but then I've spoken to a lot of other students. They drive to the university. So I've taken an alternative route, which is commuting through GoBus. So that's another way of saving. So if you just do these little things, I think that could just help.
Yeah.
In a big way.
Yeah. I guess it's hard to understand that these seemingly microscopic things, these seemingly low-cost activities do build up. That's actually my biggest challenge when it comes to changing my financial habits. It's actually not looking at the big costs, maybe buying a laptop or something, but actually looking at the small things I do every day. And maybe not even every day. Maybe it's sorry, yes?
Go ahead. Just the last point. I had this boss, so he would just write down all that he had spent during the day, so that's a very good habit. Because at the end of the day, when you get into the habit of writing down your general expense, then you have a better control.
Yeah.
So that really helps.
Yeah. And also, I noticed that when I carry cash, because I did that a couple times when I was in Boston, I actually was so cognizant of what I was buying a oh my gosh, I only have $20 and I'm actually buying myself a cup, like a souvenir. So it made me question my spending habits even more. So just always be in the moment with your money, but also make sure you always check in on your priorities. Make paying your student loan a priority too. And also make sure that you also carve out time to research these kind of things on your own. When I was actually at RBC on campus, I was talking to one of the associates, and to give you a clarification, RBC, they're not selling any services, and it's not only for us, your students. Anyone can come, your parents, anyone around the community, they can come and they can just ask questions about how to be financially well. And they are not selling you product, they were actually, so Julian, the person I've been talking to, he was a grad from York. He has friends currently in school, so they're not trying to make you feel like you need to be an RBC customer. They're actually just people they've been around the block, they know how hard it is, they have advice they can share. So he actually told me that sometimes, like a lot of people, we don't consider like talking to a bank about our financial needs just because we don't think we like know enough to like be having this conversation first of all, and we don't think it's going to make much of a difference. So go to your resources that you can. No, it's okay. Family, friends, make an appointment with a bank advisor, but don't take everything for face value. Make a lot and go to the people who make sure that when you leave, they make sure that you understand all the consequences of making this decision. So, yes.
Because I'm usually thinking is to go to bed early because when I stay late, then I use more electricity, and then when I pay my fees.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I would go
Thank you very much.
stay up 2 o'clock to watch the show.
Yeah. Same. Which is not good. Yeah. There's like these are the little things. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, is it really necessary?
Yeah. Is it really necessary? That's the biggest question.
I just want to advise the students that if you go to the college handbooks, all of the colleges have handbooks, and you look up scholarships, bursaries, and awards, all of the heads of the colleges have all of that listed for you. And some of those are the responsibility of college head, and then we also list the ones that are the responsibility of the college councils that are run by the students. Some are administered jointly, so some are distributed by the council, some are distributed by college heads, and some are done jointly. So you shouldn't miss out on that opportunity. And what I've noticed in the last couple of years is there are very few applications for some of those bursaries and scholarships. So if you go through the list and you identify that you actually qualify or are eligible to apply for these, you should. And, it won't take you very long to actually fill out the application and submit it. And then you've got a chance of winning whatever the amount is for that particular bursary.
Access the college handbook.
It's available online. So you just go to the college website, you go to the handbook, and then you can go to those relevant pages.
Thank you, Jane. So, but overall, that concludes the workshop. If you have any additional questions, I'll stick around for your questions. I'll also be at Bennett Center today. And so that question about RBC eligibility, I just want to make it clear that it does say you have to be in part-time or you can't be in, or not in studies. I haven't gotten confirmation yet that it means just for the time you're applying or throughout the period of when they're receiving the applications. So I'm not sure if it's either or yet. I'm just assuming that I just apply anyways by the deadline. I'm gonna get clarification. But the thing is, I'm just assuming that we are eligible as long as we apply at a time when we're done full-time studies, just because I was asking for myself and for like full-time student population, so I'm assuming that that was a factor when he told me about this. If it was not though, just still let your friends know and apply anyways. I believe it's just like a 250 word count of what you want to use the money for too. And a lot of these essays, by the way, they're transferable, so you can keep this as a template for your next scholarship opportunity. You just keep repurposing it. Yeah. But thank you everyone for coming and listening. I know it got complicated. Yeah. Yes.
I just want to let you know that as a college ed, nothing really makes me happier than to give students awards. And I'm sure that's shared by all the other college heads. So, we like to give out these scholarships, bursary, and awards.